Captain, so you say I might be rich and free, if I would both betray the friends that trust in me, then is the web your cunning weaves. What can I for water reprieves, for private reasons forgive? This honor among thieves. Whatever befall, I still recall the sunlit mountain side, where hearts are true and skies are blue, and love's the only guide. If these are my truth I say, no fate can fill me with dismay. Love holds the key to set me free, and love will find a way.
When I first started with her, I thought this would probably be for about, 6 months, and it lasted for 46 years, you see. And she said to me after a while, she said, you going to stay on? You going to stay with me, Else? I said, as long as you'll have me. And I said to her one day, when do I get my long service leave? And she said, she said, you won't be getting any long service leave, You're here forever. Those were her words, and I was forever, that's for sure. And now I've got my long service leave, I don't want it.
Our Glad, a personal recollection from her companion of 46 years, Elsie Wilson. I'm Adrian Swanton, and this program was made from a long interview I did with Miss Wilson talking about her years with Gladys Moncrieff.
She was a woman that didn't like to talk very much about her life, as you will gather from her book, My Life of Song. She would never say very much about what she did or what she didn't want to. But she told me a few things about her early days. She told me that they weren't wealthy. They just had enough, and that was about all. Lived in a very, very tiny house, but they were all musical. Her father could pull an organ to pieces and rebuild it, and he could play the piano. Her mother had been a professional singer. I know that for a positive fact. And I think they were such a musical family that it had to come out somewhere. Someone in the family had to have a voice or to be able to play the piano or something. Anyhow, Gladys told me that her mother knew that she had potential, for sure. And they heard that Nellie Melba was singing in Townsville. So her mother said, all right, Gladys, you come with me and we'll go down and see, and we'll see if we can have a talk. Fancy having to, as Gladys laughed about this, later on in her life, she said to me, goodness me, fancy stopping Nellie Melba and saying, would you hear my daughter sing? Because she realized afterwards that this was, impossible. She couldn't have done it. My daughter has a fine voice, Well, they've heard that so many times. And so I'm singing tonight. And I mustn't talk, you see. I can't talk. So Gladys said she'll never forget the look on her mother's face. That feeling of, oh, what a dreadful thing. She won't hear her, because she knew she had such a lovely voice, sweet. Anyhow, she said the ANA, the Australian Natives Association, collected £100 for her. So they knew that the voice was there. And her mother was very determined that she just wasn't going to stay in Townsville, that she had to get it to a teacher where she could start and get somewhere, because the voice was there. She was singing Ian Alt, and that's higher than the top C. Without a lesson. Without a lesson.
With a melody and growing low, the woodland echoes ring. Half the pipes of Pan are calling with a merry lute and swing. Hear the chorus caroling, flowing, growing, rising, falling.
anyhow, Gladys's idea was, and I think her mother's idea was, to travel to Brisbane, and Gladys should get something to do there. If she could get some singing of some kind, to get some more money. You see, they only had this £100, and this had to take them to Sydney and accommodation. So she thought, well, if I can get something to do in Brisbane before I go down. And so anyhow, they went to this vaudeville house, and she gave an audition for the man that had putting the show on. And he said, yes, he said, I think I can place you. He said, yes, I can. He said to the mother, he said, how much a week were you thinking about, salary-wise? She said, well, I don't know. She said, what do you think? You see? And in the latter part of Gladys's life, she did that for 6 weeks anyhow, that show. But in the latter part of her life, when she was really a star, this man came to see her. And he was very old then. And he said, Gladys, you remember me? And she looked at him, she said, I do. And thank you very much for giving me that chance. You don't know how much we needed that money. And so he said, he told her £7.10 a week, which was a terrific salary, you know. And of course they grabbed it. So anyhow, Gladys said, now before you go any further, I've got something to make you laugh too. And he said, what's that? She said, we would have taken £2.10 a week. He said, oh Gladys, you're worth more than that. You're worth more than that. I thought that was marvellous. Anyhow, it came about that she had to have a new frock each week. They didn't realise this, and so her mother, they both went down to the valley and bought some material, and her mother, staying with friends they were, fortunately, and her mother made her the frock for the opening night. And it was a white frock. It was very simple, and she was called the White Balladist. And so she wore white all the time. And her mother arrived in Sydney in the morning, of course, and the first thing they did was they had to look for a boarding house, just to get a boarding house somewhere to stay. And they found a little boarding house. It wasn't very expensive. And then they went for a walk into the city because it was big time, you see, after being in Townsville. In those days it was a little bush town, now it's a city. But anyhow, they went for a walk. And they went down to Martin Place because they'd heard about Martin Place, where the post office was and all this sort of thing. And her mother said, just a minute, Glad, just a minute. And she walked away and left her and came back with a lovely bunch of violets for her and handed Gladys these violets. Else, she said, I'd never forgotten that, you know. It brought the tears to my eyes to think that Mother could, in the midst of all our worries, would go over and get me a bunch of violets and hand them to me. And she sings a song called Violets, and she said, I rather liked that song because I had a feeling she liked that song because of this, you see. And then after that, they rented a little cottage, and it was a very tiny place, and she didn't say how much a week they were paying. I think she'd forgotten by this time how much it was, but she said her mother furnished it bit by bit. She'd do one room at a time, but she said she managed to get me a little piano and pay it off because she knew this was necessary for my career. What a wonderful mother she must have been. Terrific. Anyhow, she said, now we start, Glad. We'll have to look for a music teacher, and we'll have to, first of all, we'll see if we can get you a position somewhere or get you something to do right away. And they did. They went to Bondi Junction, found, and this man's name was Bain, and he was a great professional man, And it had 3 theatres, one in Newtown, one in Bondi Junction, and one in North Shore. And she had to do the 3. And nightly she would do Bondi Junction with her little frock over her arm. She would never put in a suitcase, and a little bag with her props and her makeups in. And she would go in the tram, everywhere in the tram. And then the next one would be the North Shore. She went across there. She said, in the tram, with the frock over the arm, pressed, already, so it wouldn't get crushed. She had it, even in those days. She was fussy about her clothes. And then she'd wait for the ferry, go across on the ferry, and then she would appear twice on the bill and get the ferry back home. And she said, and I'd be looking at the stars coming home. And she said, I did this every night. I was, going, then I would go to Newtown and do the same thing for this man, each night. And it went on for so long. Through this engagement, that she really started out, because this is when she wrote for an audition to J.C. Williamson's. This is where her mother wanted her to go, to J.C. Williamson's. This was the place. Didn't matter what it cost. Gladys, if they offer you £2.10 a week, dear, take it. Take it. Don't think about the money, because this man was paying her £7.10 a week too, Mr. Bain, and that was a lot of money. So take £2.10 a week if they offer it, because if they say the chorus, Gladys, jump in, you see. Anyhow, she wrote for the audition and received a reply to say yes, to go on the Tuesday, be there at 10 o'clock in the morning, take 2 songs, and then wait. And when she got there, she thought, she would be the only one. Instead of that, there was a queue down the Theatre Royal Lane, all waiting for auditions, you see. At last they called her, but she was tired. They were standing all the time. Anyhow, they called her Gladys Moncrieff, and of course, always on time. So she shot through onto the stage. And the first thing she sang was the Jewel song from Faust. And then My Hero. I mean, what a cheek. I said, what a nerve. She said, yes. Without a singing lesson else, I sang that. And anyhow, the man said, after she'd finished the 2 numbers, he said, stand over there. He said, wait, I'll see you later. And some other people were there also. Probably they were being signed up for the chorus, I should think. And as she was walking across, one girl said to her, oh, you're in for sure. And she said, well, I hope so, and I hope you are too. And anyhow, she went back to see the man to see what they thought about it. And he said, don't go, Miss Moncrieff. He said, I want to see you in a minute. He said, could you come back tomorrow, same time, bring the same songs at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning? She said, yes, I could. He said, all right, we'll be here on time. And do you know, when she went back the next day, she was the only one see. And all the lights were up on the stage, but the auditorium was dark. And the pianist was sitting at the piano, all ready. And she sang the two songs, the dual song from Faust. She said, although I said myself, else I sang them rather well, because I want to take this in both hands, if you know what I mean. Else she said, this was the beginning of something, I felt. Anyhow, she said, she did it. And the man said, now, don't go away. And all of a sudden, she saw two people walking on the stage. Nellie Melba and the director of Williamson's. They'd asked Melba, would she come in and hear this girl sing? So wasn't that a wonderful thing for her? But they knew that she had, must have known that this was a find, you know, to have this. And she said to me afterwards, else had I known Melba was there, I wouldn't have sung the dual song from Faust, because that was one of Melba's arias, you know. What a cheek I had. Anyhow, Melba said to the pianist, she said, you know, just pushed her aside, and she sat down to the piano. She said, now, I want you to do these scales with me. And Gladys sang, da-da-da-da-da, and she was going up and down the scales, and she said, Melba was taking me up, she was taking me up, and I thought, oh, anyhow, I'll try, and up she went. And then she struck one note on the piano, Melba did, and she kept on striking it like that. And she turned round and she said, do you know what note that was? And Gladys said, no, I don't, Madam Melba. She said, that was E in alt. And Gladys didn't know what note it was. E in alt. And she said, well, you know top C? Yes, you do. Well, she said, that's higher than that, you know. And she said, you have a very good voice. And if Mr. Ward says what he's going to do for you, your future career is assured. Coming from the great, as Gladys said, the best singer in the world should be sitting down, taking her up on, the scales on the piano. And of course, that thrilled her. But she said, I nearly fainted when I knew it was Melba and the dual song from Faust. Anyhow, then they talked to her then about what she would do, and Mr. Ward said, my wife is in America at the moment, and she's a singing teacher. And he said, when she comes back, I'll contact you. He said, I'll write you a letter, and I would like you to go to my wife, and I'm sure that she will start you off. She will give you lessons immediately. So he said, I think you'd better go to the office, and he said, sign a contract now. So she went to the office and signed her first contract. And the contract was for £3 for the first year, £4 for the second year, and £5 for the third year, up till then. So that was £5 a week. And but of course, Gladys said, I had all my tuition for free. I didn't have to pay for a thing. My lessons, anything at all, the firm paid for, which was as good as £10 a week in a way. It could have been more. But she said, then Mrs. Ward came back, and then I started my lessons. And she said, and don't forget, Miss Moncrieff, 9 o'clock sharp every morning. 9 o'clock sharp every morning, with the exception of Saturdays and Sundays. Anyway, she did this for 12 months with Mrs. Ward. And she used to go home and say to her mother, if she would only give me a song to sing. I'm doing exercises all the time. Her mother said, she knows what she's doing, Glad. Don't you worry yourself. She knows what she's doing. Yes, but it's so monotonous. So anyhow, one day she went and she said, now, Gladys, we're going to start on the Gilbert and Sullivan operas. What do you know about that? She said, lovely, lovely. She was raring to go, believe me. Anyhow, they started. And she did all the Gilbert and Sullivan operas with Mrs. Ward.
I hope I do not shock my late converted flock by changing to a costume that could be described as snappy. I would not have you think that I would ever sink from my high state of piety to anything less rabby. My morals have not changed Purity Brigade. To our purity we add a little fashion, a pretty ribbon of the proper shade could never hinder real religious passion.
That was the starting in show business. And she told me that the first day she left home to go on tour to Melbourne, she was still in the chorus, and she was sharing a room with one of the chorus girls. And her mother had made her a little mop cap, a satin one, to go to bed. You know, they wore them to bed in those days, with torchon lace and a little matching slip, so that she would have nice things to go away with. And she said she put them on a chair. And when she got into bed, she said she broke her heart. She cried and cried. She was so homesick, terribly homesick. And she said, I wasn't a young girl else then, but she said, I was so lonely. I wanted to go back home. And so one of the chorus girls said to her, Gladys, are you crying? She said, no. She said, I'm not crying. And I put my head under the bedclothes. And she said, and I couldn't find a handkerchief, so I used the little cap Mum had made me. That was the only thing she could find. And she said, that made me feel worse. You know, she was so terribly homesick. And, you know, I always thought that Gladys had a little bit of country in her still. Even when she grew older, there was a little bit of country there. And they went to Brisbane. The Gilbert and Sullivan Opera Company went to Brisbane. And this is when the leading lady, she went to the stage door. She was always there at 7 because she was an understudy, you see. And when she got there, he said, Miss Moncrieff, he said, I think you're on tonight. So I beg your pardon? He said, I think you're on tonight. And, oh, she said, good. So anyhow, she wasn't thinking of the leading lady, was she? She thought afterwards, what a hard thing to say, oh, good. But she meant that she wanted to get on. This is what she meant. Anyhow, she went and the stage manager was waiting for her, and he said, Gladys, you're on tonight. Oh, she said, now, he said, your clothes, you've got an hour. So he said, go into Miss Bickford's dressing room, he said, and get the key and go in there, try her clothes on, and see if they fit you. And if they don't, go straight up to the wardrobe, and they'll give you something up there. They'll find something. They might tie some of those clothes on you, he said, for this night. Make sure you've got the shoes, though. This is important. And she did all that, and she came downstairs. Now, he said, you've got your dresser. Spucked her up too. And she went in and she made up in the stars room. And she went on and she sang. And this is the night that she sang the E in alt. And this is the night that she made a great success in the Gilberts. And the orchestra stood up and tapped their instruments in the finale. Now, she said that was a great honour. If the orchestra do this for you, this is considered a great honour. And she said, you know, I was pretty shrewd, though, because that E and alt, you know, got them in. It really did. But then that was the finish of that. She only went on just for the one night. And so the management here sent a telegram to Mr. Hugh Ward in Sydney to say that Gladys was a huge success in the Gilberts because they were anxious to know how she fared as a leading lady. So when she got to Sydney, they were doing all the Gilbert and Sullivan operas. And Mrs. Ward said to Mr. Ward, how about giving her a chance, Hugh? And this is how it started. Then, of course, she was a star then from then on. No, she wasn't. After that, she did the Gilberts, and then after that, she went to South Africa to star in all the shows there. The Red Widow, the Merry Widow. What was the other shows? The Arcadians. I can't remember them all, but there were so many of them, and she was the only Australian with an all-British cast, and she was the star of that company in South Africa, and that was during the war. In 1916, she was sent there as the star. And when she came back, there wasn't a thing for her to do. So she was a walking understudy again. So she said, these are the little knocks you have to take. Here she is walking about, being paid, of course, an understudy. You wouldn't read about that, would you? I said, how did you feel? She said, well, what could I do? There wasn't anything. But it wasn't long else, she said, then they put on Katinka and Maytime, and I starred in those. So I was back again. And then she said, before I did, Tate's had, I say the Tates, Gladys said the firm, but the firm had Maid of the Mountains on the shelf for 2 years, and they were going to bring an opera star out to do it. And it was during Maytime that Mr. Hyland went across to the office. He was called to the office. And they said, George, we're going to put on Maid of the Mountains next. Who are we going to get to play at? The firm. And George said, Hyland said, you've got the girl over there. That's how he used to talk. You've got the girl over there. She can play Maid of the Mountains. Pointing to, because she was doing Maytime. He said, you don't have to go any further. You don't have to import anybody. She's here. I think they loved her in Maytime, and this was before 21, before she did Maid of the Mountains. But don't you see, these were musical comedies. This was comic opera. But it was 1921 that she really and truly was, you know, the great star. And one of the papers on the Monday morning, they didn't have a Sunday paper in Melbourne, and it said, "A Star is Born." And they only had to say that, I think. And do you know that they did, for some weeks, they did 2 shows a day. 2 shows a day of Maid of the Mountains. Comic opera, without a microphone, you know. They didn't have any hidden mics in the foots and all the things they have today. No, she did it. She sang it. And the same amount of encores, she did the same production in the afternoon as she did at night. She didn't change it. Didn't cut a thing. And a man wrote a letter, and he wrote, and he said, Gladys, he said, you were lovely. He said, in the Maid of the Mountains, he said, but don't let them kill you. Don't let them kill you. He repeated it in his letter, meaning they were giving her far too much to do for a show like that. Because there was so much singing in it, you know.
What did you feel about her role in Maid of the Mountains?
She loved it. But I think the favourite, was the widow. She loved the Merry Widow. You see, in the Maid of the Mountains, she was bad-tempered most of the night. In the Widow, it was light and frothy, and she loved that. Yes, of course, she adored the Maid because that made her, that show, that was absolutely terrific. But she loved the Widow. And a woman once said to me, a woman in the profession, she said, my fair lady has got the widow knocked into a cocked hat. I said, that's just what you think, but not so. That is not so. The widow will live forever, and haven't I proven it so? Now, Joan Sutherland's doing it, and doing it very well, I believe. This will go on forever, because the music is magnificent. Beautiful. The score is wonderful.
Some people have wondered why she didn't go into opera, why she stayed.
Well, I'll tell you why she didn't go into opera, because she couldn't afford it. Now, this is the honest truth. Now, as Gladys said, now, had she gone into opera, where would she get the money from? You know, money, you need money. They didn't have any son arias. They didn't have any competitions of any kind to give her money to go away. I mean, had the firm said, look, Gladys, we'll send you abroad for a couple of years and we'll put you under contract. When you finish, you come back to us. That would have been marvellous. But there wasn't anything. You need money to go abroad and to study and languages. That is the reason why. But Gladys said what she did, she was very happy about. She loved doing comic opera and musical comedy. But I'll tell you, it was Fritz Kreisler, you know, the famous violinist. He and Madame Kreisler became very great friends of Gladys's. He saw her in a Southern Maid, and of course I always thought this was her best production. He saw her, and he was just sitting in the stalls, and he heard her sing. And then it said that he just sat up in his seat, and I must say, this voice, you know. He told Gladys this afterwards, and he said, "Oh, Gladys," he said, "do Carmen. Make Carmen your neck. Do Carmen. Make that the next show." He said, "You'd make a marvellous Carmen." He said, "You've got the looks, you've got the voice, you've personality, you're just absolutely marvellous in Carmen." "Oh, well, I'll think about that. I'll do something about it." He said, "Well, if you don't do that," he said, "come abroad, come up to England with us," he said, and do opera." But you see, it was impossible. She couldn't do this. When Gladys did the Maid of the Mountains, she was only getting £25 a week as a star in 21. Oh, £25 a week. And once you're a star, then you start to spend money. Then you have to take something. Then you go to lunch, and then you're asked to open a fete, and you have to go and buy a new frock. And Gladys was the type of woman that went out looking like a star. You know, whatever she put on had to be something very special, because people would say, "Oh, she didn't look too hot off, you know, she's very nice on the stage." But she kept up that appearance all her life. Whenever she went out, I was very proud of her, because she always looked so lovely. She really did.
Even her costumes on stage had to be something special too, didn't they?
And they cost her a lot of money. You know, Williamson's paid, the firm paid for a few, but Gladys paid mostly, you know, all that money for her own clothes. But I have some clothes, and oh dear, 8 girls beaded one frock. Magnificent clothes she wore. And the stockings, and the shoes were magnificent. And I used to think to myself, I used to go on, walk with her until she went on the stage, always. And then right, and she'd gone on the stage, and then I used to go down to the OP and then watch some of the performance. And when she walked on in The Widow, believe me, she looked so, they applauded the clothes, I'm sure, because she looked so magnificent.
There was for the video a witch of the wood, a hunter beheld her, alone as she stood. The spell of her beauty upon him was laid. He looked and he looked,
to realise the number of people when she got married who jammed that street in front of the church.
Oh, do you know, I didn't know her then. I didn't know her. I knew her, but I mean, I wasn't that friendly with her. And I was one in that crowd. Fancy, but I'm trying to find myself. No way. But there were so many people. They were climbing on the trams, and the conductors, and one of the policemen lost his handcuffs, and he was down on the ground trying to find his handcuffs. He didn't have a chance. He never did find them. But, there were thousands and thousands. Well, you saw the crowds the Beatles had. Well, I would say she had just as many at this particular time. I think I showed you one of the photographs, didn't I? That's right. Oh, tremendous crowd. And that night she went on and played the Merry Widow. So...
a riotous performance, one reads.
Yes, she was married at 12, and then she did the Widow at night. And the next night she did the Widow, and then she was leaving for England then, after that. The second night.
And what happened to England?
Well, she went on to England on a honeymoon. She was married in 1924. She stayed there, but she was just... they were just looking about. She wasn't looking for work at this particular time. But she did, going to America... an agent came that she knew, and he said, Gladys, he said, there is a charity show going on tonight, and he said, my gosh, he said, I'd love you to get into this. He said, try. He said, do you think would you do it? She said, oh yes, I'll do it for you. And all the greats were on this bill. It was some big charity, and all the people in the theatre were there. You mentioned. They were all there. You name them. They were all there. Anyhow, she said that she went to this place on Fifth Avenue and she bought the most beautiful gown to wear. Beautiful gown. And she went on to the side of the stage to get ready. And he was a female impersonator. And he had the same frock on. Exactly, a replica. Could you believe it? Could you? And this was going to be the most wonderful opportunity of her life. And here he is. And she went and she opened her cloak that she had on, and she went like it to this man. What could she do? She couldn't go on. She couldn't go on. How could she go on But what a dreadful thing that was for her. A disappointment. Because this could have been the beginning of something in America. Although she wasn't looking for work at this particular time. She was on a honeymoon and they just went there for the holiday. So that was that, but that was a pity. But then she came back to Australia and to the firm again. She was still under contract to the firm when she went away. So she had to come back. And the firm gave... I think they gave Gladys £40 a week all the time she was away for a present, for a honeymoon present. So that was rather wonderful. Well, after she came back, she was still under contract to the firm, and so she went through and did Lady of the Rose and Sybil, which were two very nice shows, very good shows. She starred in those, and then her contract had finished, had run out, and Gladys wanted more money to stay in Australia. She was then getting £160 a week, but she wanted £180 a week, and so they wouldn't give it to her, so she went overseas, and that's how she did so well in the Bloom. She went over there, and then she did two shows in London. The first one, the book was very bad, shocking, but she herself had made a great success in it personally. So then she said, "Now I've done that. She had very good notices for the show. Now I'll stay. I'll wait." And she kept her weight down. She was 9 stone 11 when they asked her would she play the Blue Mazurka, and that was it. And then she really felt, I'm a Daly's Theatre. Her name was up in lights. And the man that put all his money into it, James White, Jimmy White they used to call him, committed suicide when the show was on for 6 months. Of course, that was the end of the Blue Mazurka. And now she said, now I want to go home. I made a great success over here. Now I can go home and I can ask for what I want. She didn't, told me this anyway. So the firm thought they might like her to do, what was the name of the show now? It's left me for a moment.
Vagabond King?
The Vagabond King. They want to do the Vagabond King. And Gladys said, Else, I couldn't see myself going back to Australia. With a fair wig on and plaits, no way in this world. If I'm going back to Australia, I want a little bit of glamour. Because she'd had it in London, beautiful clothes, and this is how she wanted to come back. So then Fuller's had Rita. And they asked her, would she go to America and see the show, and if she liked it, would she do it for them? And she saw the show 3 times, and the 3 times she saw the show, the understudy was on. So she never saw the leading lady in Rio Rita. But they told her she could buy her clothes in America. Anything she wanted she could buy in America. And that's how badly they needed her. And when she, I think Fuller's agent was in America, and he was at the show with Gladys. And he said to her, do you like it? She said, I do. I really do. And he said, all right, we'll talk about this later. So they had supper, and he said, how much do you want? And she told him. He said, oh, they won't pay you that. All right, she said, doesn't matter. I go back to London. And so he sent a wire to Fuller, and Sir John Fuller said, no Moncrieff, no Rio Rita. So fair enough, there it was. I was surprised, that Williamson's didn't buy that, because it was a great show, it really was. It was bright and frothy. It wasn't Gladys's greatest role, but she was back, and the people loved her, and it was a great success. Well, I wasn't invited to be her dresser. What happened, she always had a dresser, paid a dresser. But she wanted somebody to go on tour with her, you see, and then I don't know what happened. Of course, she wasn't with her husband then, and they'd parted, and she said to me, I don't know why me, I will never know to this day. But I had been to her place to dinner previously, and I had talks with her. I saw her trousseau before she was married. All that. I knew Gladys that much, you see. And then in 1929, the end of 1929, she said, "Else, would you like to come on tour with me?" I said, "You say that again?" She said, "No," she said, "I really mean it, would you? Do you think your mother would let..." I said, "Oh, yes." I said, "Anyhow," she said, "I'll write a letter. I'll write a letter to your mother," which she did. And Mum said, "Yes, by all means." And I thought it would just be for perhaps a season, to go. I think we were going up north, you see. And I thought, well, this is only going to go up north. It was 46 years. 46 years in the service. Yes, we became great friends, really and truly great friends. And I loved her dearly. I really did.
Her trip to New Guinea singing for the soldiers?
First of all, Sir Thomas Blaney, he was Sir Thomas Blaney then. He asked Claude Kingston, who was one of the directors of Williamson's, did he think that Gladys would go to New Guinea and sing to the troops? And, Claude, and he said also, "Claude, ask Gladys what fee. He said, you know how to go about it, Claude. You know what to say and what to do." So Claude turned around and he said, "Tom," he called him. "Tom," he said, "I can tell you now what she's going to say, but I'll still ask her. She's going to say, by all means, I'd love to sing to the troops. How much?" "Nothing." "Oh, no payment, thank you, no payment. I don't want any money for this, thank you." That was what the very words that Claude Kingston said. To him, Gladys told Claude, "No, I don't want anything." She said, "That is my great honour." And she was a great success in New Guinea. Great success. And where this one particular place here in New Guinea, where they had the 17,000 cheering her, and across the oval they had a great big sign, and it had "Welcome to our Glad" written on this thing, and this touched Gladys very much. It was a hard thing. She said it was much harder to sing for the troops than it was to sing to an audience, because she was coming home and they were going on. She was leaving them behind, if you know what I mean. They were going to fight after she left. She was coming home for Christmas, but they were still there. And some of them, she said, also 19 and 20 years of age. And she did say to me once, "I wonder how many of these lads will be coming back home again." And, and then after that, of course, later on she went to Korea. And this is where she wouldn't leave Korea until she had sung to the Australian troops. And we went right out, almost to the front line, I thought. It sounded like it anyway. We weren't allowed any lights on at all. But the boys were weary. They just threw themselves as they came out of the front line, all the dirt, and just collapsed on the hillsides. And all round the hills you could see the lads, and waiting for Gladys to sing, and the company, of course, that she had with her. And they couldn't put any lights on because we were too close to the front line. But I remember this night Gladys sang 17 songs, and all the boys were singing with her when she sang "Land of Hope and Glory." You could hear them all over the place. It was absolutely marvellous. Gladys was never sorry. She was really thrilled that she was able at this particular time to do this, because this was after the accident, a bad accident. And we had 2 pianos on board in New Guinea, and you would know New Guinea. You told me before this interview that you'd been to New Guinea. We had to go to Dobadura, and you could only go there at certain, during certain times, because you had to go through the hills. And we were called at 3 a.m. in the morning, and we didn't leave the airport till 6. So the soldier said, "Oh, that's all right, Glad. You better get used to this. It's a case of hurry and wait up here, But she was very happy about that all.
We go back, and we did say we were going to talk about the accident. The accident, how did it happen?
Well, she was doing this tour, for the ABC, and she was travelling by car at this particular time, she and her manager, and it was the only time that I hadn't been with her, and my mother was having cataracts removed from her eyes, and so I stayed with her for a few days. And then I said to Gladys, I'll pick you up in Melbourne. She said, all right. That was the only time that I hadn't been in the car. And they got as far as Mordialloc, and I think that they'd had trouble in Adelaide with the car, the steering wheel. They had a bit of a wobble. And they took it to the manager took it to the garage to have it. He said, I think it'll get you there. His words. We'll get you there. And he wasn't travelling fast because just before then they'd had a raspberry milkshake because Gladys was doing it with the ABC, and of course she wouldn't have a drink. You couldn't get Gladys to have a hard drink of any kind when she was working. And she'd had this, and when they found, they thought Gladys was dead, of course. She was flat out in the car, and the dogs were in the car, both dogs, they weren't hurt. But the manager, he wasn't hurt as severely as Gladys was because the foot was hanging from her leg. And a scout boy found her, and he put a splint on her arm, and the ambulance came. And when the ambulance men put her into the ambulance, of course she'd blacked out, you see, and she kept on coming to, and they kept on saying, what is your name? You see, they wanted her name. What is your name? And she said, Gladys Moncrieff. Oh, he said, oh. And he said to the driver, he said, well, if that's Gladys Moncrieff, he said, my name's Caruso. That's really true. She was so badly knocked about. And when I saw her I was on the train, because of course there weren't any planes, and when I saw her, it was a horrible sight. All the face and the was all black down the side, and her leg was all in the air, and her arm was out, and she looked pathetic. She really did. But they were keeping her under sedation, and she had been asking for me. And when I went to the gate, and Gladys' sister was with me, and her brother, and I said, could I see Mrs. Gladys Moncrieff, please? He said, no visitors. Well, I said, she will see me, I know. I said, my name's Elsie Wilson. And he said, oh, Elsie. Oh, she's been asking for you.
What about the final performance? What was that like?
The final performance was in a place called Hamilton. And it was a little country town. It was a lovely town in New Zealand. But it was a small town. It wasn't in Wellington or Christchurch or Auckland, any of those, the larger towns. But, they gave her a wonderful night, really. And the chorus men, of course, the whole company came on, and the audience sang. And they called out to her, and all the boys in the chorus, they had cloaks, and they took them off, and they threw them down the ground to let her walk on their cloaks, on the red cloaks, right down to the footlights. It was a beautiful finale, and the whole cast sang and wished her the best of luck. Well, that was her night, to a wonderful, wonderful house. So that was the end of her career, but it was a shame that she hadn't, I think, finished it with the firm, the people she'd started with. Just to have done one production, or given her one night only with the other entertainers in this lovely country of ours, in Australia. We had some lovely talent. They could have had a glorious night for Gladys and given her a wonderful send-off from the theatre. And they had the people here, and they could have entertained her on this night. That's what I think. I think that I've had a wonderful life, and I think if I had it over again, I would do the same thing. So I think that's wonderful to be able to say that, don't you, about an artist, especially in the theatre? Yes, I really was. She was like my sister. She was like a wonderful sister to me, and she took me out of my environment and put me into hers, which was wonderful. Wonderful indeed.
Mystery of life at last I found thee.
Our Glad, a personal recollection. I'm Adrian Swanton, and I've been talking with Elsie Wilson about some of the events during her 46 years as companion to Gladys Moncrieff. I'd also like to thank Alan Capern, Rigby's for My Life of Song, Kathy Flood, and on the technical side, Jimmy Drake.
The joy and idle tears